Hello, my name is Ian Kluge, and welcome to the Baha'i Philosophy Channel. The following talk provides a general overview of this project. The core mission of this channel is to encourage people to explore the Baha'i writings from a philosophical perspective, whether it is the perspective employed in these talks or from some other perspective. It must, of course, be understood that the Baha'i faith is first, foremost, and essentially a divine revelation, but a revelation that embeds a logical, coherent, and hierarchically integrated philosophical worldview. In other words, the philosophical aspects embedded in the Baha'i writings are an integral part of the revelation itself and contribute directly to our understanding of its teachings. My specific purpose is to study the philosophy using the concepts, terms, and arguments explicitly found in the Baha'i writings themselves. These concepts, terms, and arguments are originally part of the Baha'i writings and are not a result of translating from one language into another. Because they are given to us by Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi, they are a logical place to begin our study of the philosophical aspects of the Baha'i writings. Of course, other approaches to the writings are possible, such as process philosophy, feminist philosophy, and comparative philosophy as regards various philosophers and religions. I would like to remind viewers that in the Baha'i faith there is no privileged class or clergy or scholars whose views are immune to challenge and disagreement. In other words, understanding of the texts is personal. Indeed, the Baha'i writings strongly emphasize the duty of all individuals to investigate the truth for themselves. Because of God's infinite generosity in giving us an endlessly evolving reality, no human being has or ever will be able to write the final and definitive study on anything. These talks are selections from my work in progress, The Baha'i Writings, A Philosophical Approach, which I estimate will be finished in late 2023 or early 2024. However, before I continue, I would like to state that with his generous permission, I gratefully dedicate this channel to Dr. Iraj Ayman. Over many decades, and in all parts of the world, Dr. Ayman's tireless work for the Irfan Foundation and the Irfan Colloquia around the world has encouraged and brought attention to the works of countless Baha'i scholars. He has truly exemplified the Baha'i principle of investigating the truth for oneself. Without Dr. Ayman's efforts, Baha'i scholarship would be very much poorer. His work has enriched us all. I would also like to express grateful thanks to my wife Kirsty for her unfailing encouragement and support for my research and writing over the years. She was and is the necessary precondition of all my work. Without her, none of this would have been possible. It bears emphasizing that the Baha'i faith is first and foremost and in essence a revealed religion and no mere philosophy in the ordinary sense of the word. Unlike any man-made philosophy, Baha'u'llah's revelation has imbued mankind with a new spirit of life breathed into the body of the world. That's from Abdu'l-Baha's Promulgation of Universal Peace. I will repeat that. Baha'u'llah's revelation has imbued mankind with a new spirit of life breathed into the body of the world to improve the character of all men. As the global growth of the Baha'i faith demonstrates, this new spirit, growing from the bottom up and not imposed by force from the top down, has transformed the character and lives of millions around the world. The teachings and the administration has been successfully field tested in virtually every country and across virtually all cultures. The desperate need for a new spirit of life becomes blindingly obvious when we examine the history of the 20th century. This history provides horrific examples of humans attempting to make radical changes for the improvement of society. However, they lacked a truly new spirit. That is, they acted in the old spirit of competitive power politics, often fueled by concepts of relentless class warfare, ultranationalism, social Darwinism based on the principle of survival of the fittest, intrinsic racial superiority, and or rigid concepts of elitism. They did so, excuse me for a moment, in a coercive, top-down manner which was unable to truly transform character and subsequent human action. That is why these regimes only established sharper and more technologized versions of the very past they were trying to undo. The Russian Revolution is a clear example from which we can all learn. Imbued with a spirit of relentless class warfare and without fundamental character reform, the revolutionaries basically recreated the old socio-political order they sought to abolish. In significant respects, they simply repeated the past. The autocratic Tsar was replaced by autocratic political leaders like Lenin and Stalin. The aristocracy was replaced by the party cadres and functionaries who enjoyed many special privileges. The Okhrana, the old Tsarist secret police, was replaced by the Cheka, the NKVD and KGB. And at the bottom, the peasants and ordinary Russians were at least as oppressed as before. The evidence is that the vast Gulag, forced, in other words, slave labor camp system spread across the old USSR. This tragic pattern, repeated in all kinds of variations elsewhere, is one of the reasons I have become convinced that Baha'u'llah's revelation offers a realistic hope for change by building from the bottom up in a truly new spirit of life. From a Baha'i perspective, his revelation is authoritative for the modern world. However, this does not, and on his own basis, its basis of his own teaching, should not hinder us from the independent investigation of truth, because once every soul inquires into truth, society will be freed from the darkness of continually repeating the past. To advance the philosophical and practical goals of Baha'u'llah's revelation, Abdu'l-Baha provides rational arguments, which, he tells us, are what the people of the world require in this day. In general, reason serves three functions in the Baha'i writings. First, it serves to analyze what the Baha'i writings say in order to understand the teachings and the underlying reasons for them. The leading question here is, why would Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi say that? Such careful analysis may strengthen our confidence in the Baha'i writings and therefore inspires rational trust and with it the heart. This unified action of heart and mind amplifies the power of our understanding. Rational trust is based on carefully examined evidence from the past to the likelihood of good results in the future. For example, we swallow the medicines prescribed to us by our doctor and given to us by our pharmacist because she has always prepared them correctly in the past. We know there is a very slight chance of a mistake or, horribly, of malfeasance, but the overwhelming odds are that the medicine is what she says it is. The rational arguments given for the Baha'i writing serve to build such rational trust. I shall discuss this issue again when we consider the nature of faith. The second function of reason is to act as a bulldozer, to clear away the puzzles, disagreements, and misunderstandings that prevent a wholehearted and rational acceptance of the Baha'i faith. It helps clear the way for direct and clear understandings of the teachings. I shall explore this aspect further in the section on human epistemology. The third function of reason is to help us to apply the teachings in a rational manner that will actually get intended results. Reason helps us to ensure that our actions are in keeping with our goals and the nature of things, situations, and the people we are working with. Baha'u'llah's revelation must not become what Abdu'l-Baha says, a pipe dream of lofty ideals and sentiments that cannot be put into effect. One of the distinguishing features of the Baha'i Faith writings is that they explicitly invite a philosophical, that is, rational understanding of Baha'u'llah's revelation and its explication by Abdu'l-Baha and Shoghi Effendi. These concepts and terminology are clearly in evidence in some of the following quotations. This first one is from Abdu'l-Baha's Some Answered Questions. Some hold that the body is the substance, and that it subsists by itself, and that the spirit is an accident which subsists through the substance of the body. The truth, however, is that the rational soul is the substance through which the body subsists. If the accident, the body, is destroyed, the substance, the spirit, remains. Another quote from Baha'u'llah's Gleanings. Unto this subtle, this mysterious and ethereal being the manifestations of God like Baha'u'llah and Jesus and Buddha, he, God, hath assigned a twofold nature, the physical pertaining to the world of matter, and the spiritual which is born of the substance of God himself. Another quote reads as follows, the substance of something is usually contrasted with its accidents. A substance denotes the essential being of an entity. As Aristotle explains, substances are subjects for all the other accidents, and all other things are predicated of them or are in them. An example of a substance is this man and this horse, whereas the predicated accidents, according to Aristotle, consists of quality, quantity, relation, space, time, posture, possession, action, and passivity. If we say Socrates is existing, existence in this case is predicated as a quality of the substance Socrates. This is from Abdu'l-Baha's essay, Tablet on the Unity of Existence. Over the course of my talks, we shall unpack what these powerful metaphysical and ontological statements mean. What is clearly noticeable here is the Aristotelian concepts and terms, such as substance, form, accident, essence, potential, as well as the use of Aristotle's categories. We shall explore this further throughout these talks. The following statement encapsulates the Baha'i outlook on reason. This is from Abdu'l-Baha's The Promulgation of Universal Peace, page 23. If religious belief and doctrine is at variance with reason, it proceeds from the limited mind of man and not from God. Therefore, it is unworthy of belief and not deserving of attention. The heart finds no rest in it, and real faith is impossible. How can man believe that which he knows to be opposed to reason? Is this possible? Can the heart accept that which reason denies? Reason is the first faculty of man, and the religion of God is in harmony with it. That again comes from The Promulgation of Universal Peace, page 23. We shall analyze this essential passage in greater detail by looking at what it contains. First of all, it tells us that the Baha'i writings support the claim that reason and knowledge acquired by reason, if used correctly and under the correct conditions, provide knowledge about reality. In short, reality and reason correspond to each other, which is, of course, the correspondence theory of truth. As Abdu'l-Baha says in Some Answered Questions, philosophy consists in comprehending, so far as human nature permits, the realities of things as they are in themselves. All of the following points will not only be explained in this section on epistemology that is to come. In other words, There is a correspondence between correct reasoning and reality. This is called the realist theory of reasoning. Also, the reasonable nature of reality is established by God. In other words, it has a divine mandate. There is no necessity or probability that absolutely random events will somehow create order over 15 billion years that the universe has existed. If all events are random, it is difficult to see any possibility of order, since any momentary order that emerges would be unlikely to endure. Thus, reason leads to a Bayesian argument for the existence of a creator. In other words, the existence of God is more likely than his non-existence. Creation, as we know it, is structured to be accessible to correctly used reason, which can give us true knowledge about the real world. Indeed, if it didn't, humans would not have survived 3 million years of evolution, nor could science be using reason to explore reality. Because reality is amenable to reason, it is clear that creation is orderly in nature. This is what makes science possible, because it provides predictability. The orderly nature of creation rules out extreme skepticism as a dogmatic viewpoint. In other words, it rules out all positions that deny the existence of truth and humans' ability to know it. The Baha'i writings make it clear that there is truth that can be known, and that error at the personal and or cultural level exists. Finally, consequently, truth is objective and not only dependent on human perception and thought. As noted previously, my own particular approach is to explore the Baha'i writings on the basis of the concepts, terms, explanations, and arguments persistently and consistently found throughout the Baha'i writings. In my next talk, I shall explain in detail how Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, and his two authorized interpreters, Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi, continually use certain concepts, terms, and arguments from the philosophy of Aristotle, Plato, and Plotinus in explicating and applying the teachings. But the Baha'i writings confirm the validity of such Aristotelian concepts as substance, potential, form, matter, accident, essence, and fourfold causality. In addition, the Baha'i writings also confirm, the Baha'i writings also confirm Plato's teaching that the material world is a shadow or reflection of a superior non-material world, and that God's relationship to the created world is by means of an intermediary, in other words, the manifestations of God. The Baha'i writings also confirm Plotinus's concept of creation by emanation. All of these concepts will be explained in the next few talks. It is important to emphasize that the Baha'i writings only use certain concepts of Aristotle, Plato, and Plotinus. They do not accept everything these philosophers have written. For example, they completely reject Aristotle's view of the female sex, the organization of Plato's Republic, and Plotinus's concept of ontological fusion with the One or God in moments of mystical ecstasy. For Baha'is, the use of Plato, Aristotle, and Plotinus has at least two consequences. First, it seems obvious to study the philosophy embedded in the writings by using the concepts and terms provided by the writings themselves. Why would Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi introduce these concepts into the sacred texts if they did not intend to use them? Indeed, as we shall see through these talks, knowledge of the Greek concepts they employ help clarify and sharpen our understanding of the texts. From a Baha'i perspective, the second consequence is that the consistent use of this tradition of Plato, Aristotle, and Plotinus confirms the truth of the concepts and terms used not only in relationship to the writings, but also in analyzing and understanding reality in general. For non-Baha'is, using Plato, Aristotle, and Plotinus represents a rational and logically coherent alternative to the dominant physicalist, positivist, analytical, and postmodern thinking that dominates contemporary philosophical discourse. However, this alternative is supported by the strong current revival of the Greek tradition of understanding reality in regards to the sciences, ethics, epistemology, and the philosophy of human nature. There is a whole list of important contemporary philosophers to take note of. We have Edward Feser, Henry Veitch, Thomas Taco, Daniel D. Novotny, G.E.M. Anscombe, Rosalind Hursthouse, Norris Clark, and Mortimer Adler, and even quantum physicist Werner Heisenberg. He has shown that using certain Aristotelian concepts can be useful in understanding reality at the quantum level. Indeed, especially Norris and Feser have written extensively about how many of these concepts have made their way into modern philosophy and science, albeit under different names and with more modern definitions. For example, the Aristotelian concept of potential, endorsed by Heisenberg, is an inescapable part of modern scientific thinking, even although it is often renamed as a disposition for certain results to appear. In short, this Greek tradition does not lock the Baha'i writings into an antiquated and irrelevant worldview. Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi employ this tradition, the foundational terms and concepts, to explicate Baha'u'llah's teachings and apply them to traditional and modern issues. Here's a list of some of the modern issues to which they have been applied. A philosophical solution to the mind-body problem. Mankind's spiritual, social, economic, political evolution toward a unified world commonwealth. A new framework for economics and labor relations. A philosophy of freedom as well as equality and equity. A metaphysically based philosophy of justice. The essential oneness of all religions. The ultimate oneness of science and religion, a philosophical solution to the conflict between metaphysical materialism and metaphysical idealism, and a philosophical understanding of the concept of quality as discussed in the neurosciences and in neurophilosophy. As I understand it, the philosophy embedded in the Baha'i writings presents a logical, coherent, and hierarchically integrated worldview, as we see in the example of Thomas Aquinas, Hegel, or Karl Marx. In other words, the Baha'i writings have an enormously broad reach with relevance to virtually all aspects of human life. Of course, in my view, the Baha'i writings supersede these predecessors in depth and breadth, and offer a worldview that is specifically timely and relevant to the unique historical situation in which we find ourselves. This is especially true in regards to Marxism because of its denial of the entire spiritual dimension of reality and its resultingly fundamentally inadequate understanding of human nature. Sooner or later, this misunderstanding leads to disaster. What makes the Baha'i writings unique in regards to Aquinas and Hegel is their carefully articulated goal of working to unite the nations of the world to a federal commonwealth in which powers, rights, and responsibilities will be carefully distributed to prevent the evils of over-centralization. The philosophical worldview of the Baha'i writings begins with the most general topics and then becomes more specific in a logically coherent order. In other words, each topic is prepared for by its predecessor and prepares for its successor. They do this by providing the necessary and sufficient principles, information, and arguments to establish a clear line of reasoning. In my understanding, the order is as follows. It begins with metaphysics, which deals with the origin, nature, and structure of reality as a whole, then proceeds to ontology, the specific nature of different kinds of things and beings, then goes on to the philosophy of human nature, the essential or universal and accidental constituents of human nature and why we are the way we are. Epistemology, what we can know and how we can know it. Ethics in general principles, and then subdivided into personal ethics, spiritual and material, and societal ethics, spiritual and material. Aesthetics, which deals with the role of arts and the concepts of beauty in human evolution. It is important to note here that Baha'u'llah is also referred to as the Blessed Beauty. Philosophy of history, what we can see in and learn from the historical process. Human evolution, the next stage of mankind's material, psychological, societal, and political evolution. My talks will generally follow this order.